Millionaire CEO walks in on his secretary by accident. What happened next changed their lives forever. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us.
This collection
in bringing you
represents
more
years of
dramatic
work,
stories.
of
Your
secrets held
support
close,
means the world
finally
to us.
brought into the light.
Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us get back to our main character. The sharp click of leather shoes echoed down the marble hallway of Cole Dynamics. The morning light spilled through the glass walls, catching the reflection of Adrian Cole, 33. Perfectly tailored suit, unreadable eyes. To his employees, he was the untouchable CEO, the man who built an empire from nothing. But today, even he looked distracted, checking his phone while walking fast, mind already in a board meeting that was supposed to start in 10 minutes. He reached for a door, half listening to the sound of his assistant calling out, "Sir, that's not..." Click. Too late. The door swung open. For a heartbeat, time froze. Inside, a young woman stood by the file cabinet, blouse half unbuttoned, her hair loose, eyes wide in shock. She had spilled coffee on her shirt and was frantically dabbing at the stain with a paper towel. The scent of roasted beans and floral perfume filled the small office. Adrian froze in the doorway. Their eyes locked hers, full of panic, his stunned but oddly calm. "Sir? You cannot just..." she stammered, clutching her shirt closed. Adrian blinked, realizing what had just happened. I am sorry. I thought this was the conference room." "Clearly it is not," she said, her cheeks burning crimson. He stepped back immediately, muttering an apology as the door shut between them with a soft, guilty click. Silence fell. Only the faint hum of office air conditioning remained. Inside the room, Lily Harper pressed her palms to her face, mortified. It was her first week as a temporary secretary, the last job she could get after 3 months of searching. And of course, she had just been walked in on by her boss. Outside, Adrian stood motionless. He could still hear the faint shuffle of papers behind the door. He could have left, pretended nothing happened, but for some reason he did not move. Something about her voice, the mixture of fear, defiance, and embarrassment, made him pause. A small thing, a mistake, yet it lingered. By noon, rumors had already begun to ripple through the office corridors. "Did you hear what happened with the new secretary?" someone whispered near the coffee machine. He walked right in on her. Quote, "On purpose? No one knows." Adrian sat in his corner office overlooking Manhattan, ignoring the city skyline for once. He told himself it was nothing, a misunderstanding. But the image replayed in his mind. The startled look in her eyes, the way she stood her ground despite the humiliation. He was not supposed to notice that. CEOs did not notice temporary staff. Meanwhile, in a cluttered break room downstairs, Lily sat alone, clutching a paper cup of coffee, her hand still trembling slightly. She had not meant to raise her voice at him, but the whole thing had been mortifying. And yet, the way he had looked at her, not with arrogance or pity, but with something else, something she could not name, unsettled her even more. She sighed, glancing at the clock. 11:45. Rent was due tomorrow, and she still did not know how to pay it. Her paycheck would not even cover half. She thought about quitting. But what would she do then? "Just one mistake," she whispered to herself. "Maybe he will forget about it." She had no idea that upstairs, the same man she hoped would forget her had just told his assistant, "Find out who that woman is, the one in the small office near the design wing." And somewhere between guilt and curiosity, something unfamiliar began to stir. One accidental door, one wrong moment, and the beginning of everything neither of them planned for. Would you have done the same, opened the wrong door, or walked away and pretended nothing happened? By the next morning, the city had already swallowed the story whole. The cold wind of Manhattan rushed through the steel canyons between skyscrapers, carrying rumors with it. Inside Cole Dynamics, people whispered more than they typed. But in a company this large, gossip was oxygen. No one dared say it out loud in front of the boss, yet everyone knew. The new secretary had caught the CEO's eye. Lily Harper kept her head down, pretending not to hear. She walked quickly through the glass hallway, her ID badge swinging from her neck. Every click of her heels sounded louder than usual. The air inside the building always smelled like coffee and printer ink, a smell she could never quite escape. Her cubicle sat in the far corner, just close enough to see the executive wing but far enough to never belong there. She sat down, turned on her computer, and stared at the numbers on her screen without seeing them. Her heart still raced from yesterday's humiliation. Rent was due in 2 days. Her mother's hospital bill was already past due. She had $58 left in her bank account. She had promised herself she would not cry at work, not again. On her desk sat a small sketchbook with pencil marks smudged along the cover. Drawing was her secret escape. Between answering calls and typing schedules, she would sketch whatever came to mind: a cup of coffee, a city skyline, or sometimes the face of a man she could not quite forget. She sighed and whispered to herself, "You cannot afford another mistake, Lily. Keep your head down. Do your job." At that same moment, 30 floors above, Adrian Cole stared out the window of his office. The city stretched beneath him like a living map, but his thoughts were elsewhere. He should have been preparing for the quarterly board meeting, but his mind kept drifting back to the incident yesterday. He had replayed it far too many times. The shock in her eyes, the way her voice trembled yet did not break. He opened his laptop, meaning to review a proposal. Instead, he typed a note to himself. Find out more about Lily Harper. He hesitated, then deleted it. It was not professional. But curiosity had a strange power. It crept in quietly, like a whisper that refused to fade. Downstairs, Lily tried to stay invisible. She brought files to departments, answered calls, kept her tone polite. Yet, every time she passed someone in the hallway, she caught a flicker of knowing eyes. By lunchtime, she escaped to the break room, clutching a cup of soup. "Rough first week?" a voice asked. It was Ben from accounting, kind but nosy. "You could say that," she replied softly. "I would not worry. People talk. They always will. Just stay professional, and the noise will fade." She nodded, grateful yet uneasy. Her phone buzzed a reminder from the landlord. Payment due tomorrow. She closed her eyes, inhaled, and let the noise of the cafeteria blur into a dull hum. Meanwhile, Adrian's assistant knocked on his office door. "Sir, the meeting with the design team is ready." He turned, forcing his expression back to its usual calm. "Thank you. I will be there in a minute." When he entered the meeting room, he froze for a second. Sitting at the corner of the table, organizing documents, was Lily. She did not look up, focused entirely on aligning the papers perfectly. Adrian's heartbeat changed tempo. The same scent of coffee and lilac perfume lingered in the air. For a moment, he almost smiled. The meeting began. Numbers, projections, charts. Adrian's voice carried authority, but his gaze drifted occasionally toward the quiet woman at the end of the table. She took notes, her handwriting neat, her expression unreadable. When it ended, people began filing out. Lily gathered the papers quickly, avoiding his eyes. But before she could leave, he spoke. "Miss Harper," he said. She froze mid-step. "Good work on the coordination today." She turned slightly, surprised. "Thank you, sir." Their eyes met again, brief, cautious, charged. Then she left the room. Adrian stood there for a moment, hands in his pockets, wondering why such a small encounter left him unsettled. Downstairs, Lily exhaled as soon as the elevator doors closed. Her pulse finally slowed, but a strange warmth lingered. Outside, the rain began to fall against the glass walls of Cole Dynamics. Neither of them knew that this storm was only the beginning. One mistake had tied their paths together tighter than either of them could imagine. Sometimes fate does not ask for permission. It just opens the wrong door and watches what happens next. That night, the office lights dimmed one by one until only a faint glow remained on the top floor. Most of the staff had gone home, leaving behind the soft hum of machines and the distant sound of rain tapping against the tall windows. Lily Harper was still there, alone, sorting through folders that no one else wanted to finish. Her desk lamp flickered weakly. She rubbed her temples and whispered, "Just one more hour." She was exhausted, but the quiet gave her peace. When everyone left, she could breathe, she could think. In the drawer beside her, the small sketchbook peeked out again. The corners were worn, and graphite stains marked her fingers. She flipped it open without thinking. Between pages of office doodles and city lines, one sketch stood out. A quick pencil drawing of a man's profile, strong jawline, focused eyes, calm expression. She had drawn it from memory after the meeting that afternoon. She should have been ashamed, but somehow she was not. She traced the outline with her fingertip. "You are just another boss, nothing more," she murmured to herself, though her voice lacked conviction. The elevator chimed softly in the distance. She thought it was security making rounds, but the footsteps that followed were too steady, too familiar. Adrian Cole appeared at the end of the hallway, his tie loosened, his phone in hand. He stopped when he saw the light from her office. "Miss Harper?" Lily jumped slightly, snapping the sketchbook shut. "Mr. Cole, I was just finishing the reports. I will leave soon." He nodded, stepping closer. "You are working late. Again." "I have nowhere better to be," she said with a faint smile, then quickly regretted her honesty. Adrian looked at her for a moment, then placed his phone on the table. "May I?" He gestured to the sketchbook she was trying to hide. She hesitated. "It is nothing important, just scribbles." "Still, may I see?" Reluctantly, she handed it over. He flipped through the pages slowly, his brow softening as he turned each one. Coffee cups, rainy streets, the skyline outside the office window. And then he stopped. His own face stared back at him in graphite. Lily's cheeks turned red. "That one was practice. I draw people sometimes. I am sorry if it is inappropriate." He smiled, a rare, genuine smile. "It is more than practice. You have talent." "It does not pay rent," she said quietly. "Maybe not yet," he replied, setting the sketchbook down carefully. "But it says something real about you." She looked up, unsure how to respond. For a moment, the heavy world around them, the money, the hierarchy, the walls of glass seemed to disappear. A loud thunderclap broke the silence. The power flickered. The lights went out completely, leaving only the faint emergency glow from the exit signs. "Oh great," Lily muttered. "This building is supposed to be state-of-the-art." Adrian chuckled softly. "State-of-the-art still loses to New York weather." They both laughed awkwardly, sincerely. It was the first time either of them had laughed all week. He took out his phone and turned on the flashlight, illuminating her face. "There, better. Thank you," she said, her voice softer now. He studied her for a second, longer than necessary. The glow of the phone light caught in her eyes, reflecting the spark he had not seen in anyone for years. The lights came back on suddenly. Both of them blinked, startled by the return of brightness. She stepped back quickly, trying to regain her composure. "I should really finish this," she said, reaching for the files again. "Of course," he replied, his tone professional once more. "Good night, Miss Harper." "Good night, Mr. Cole." Quote. He left, but as he walked toward the elevator, he glanced down at his hand. A small smear of graphite had rubbed off from the sketchbook onto his skin. He smiled faintly before wiping it away. Back at her desk, Lily stared at the door long after it closed. Her heart was racing, her thoughts louder than the storm outside. She picked up her pencil again and whispered, "Maybe fate does not make mistakes after all." Cried, "Have you ever met someone by accident who made you question everything you believed about luck, timing, or destiny?" The next morning, sunlight poured through the tall glass windows of Cole Dynamics, painting gold streaks across the polished floors. The storm had passed, but something about the building felt different. Maybe it was just Lily's imagination, or maybe it was the echo of last night's strange, quiet moment between her and the man who owned everything around her. She arrived early, hoping to bury herself in work before anyone noticed her. The office was still empty, the only sound the soft click of her keyboard. But she could not stop replaying the memory of the flashlight in her face, the way his voice had softened when he said her name. She told herself it meant nothing. People in his world did not look twice at women like her. By mid-morning, her department was called to a meeting. It was unusual. The CEO rarely met with the lower-level staff. When Lily stepped into the conference room, her breath caught. Adrian Cole was already there, speaking to the design director. His suit was darker today, his expression calmer but unreadable. He noticed her immediately, offering a subtle nod that made her heart stumble. She took her usual seat near the end of the table, pretending to focus on her notes. The meeting began as usual, figures, projections, deadlines. Then Adrian's tone shifted. "Our company needs fresh ideas," he said, walking toward the whiteboard. "We have become predictable, safe. I want something human, something that reminds people who we serve." The room fell silent. Managers exchanged nervous glances. No one dared speak. Then his eyes found Lily again. "Miss Harper," he said, his voice even. "You are new here. What does something human mean to you?" Lily froze. Every pair of eyes in the room turned toward her. She swallowed hard. "Sir, I am not sure I am qualified to answer." "I think you are," he said quietly. "Go ahead." Her mind raced. She could hear her heartbeat louder than the hum of the projector. Finally she spoke. "I think people do not trust brands anymore. They trust stories. They want to see truth, even if it is not perfect." A few eyebrows lifted around the room. Adrian nodded slowly. Truth over polish, he repeated. Interesting. Quote. Someone else tried to shift the topic, but Adrian stayed with her idea. He asked questions, drew out her thoughts, built on them. For the first time, Lily felt her voice matter. When the meeting ended, he stopped her at the door. You handled that well, he said. Do you always see the world in sketches? She smiled nervously. Maybe. Drawing helps me understand things I cannot explain. He looked at her sketchbook she was holding, then said, Keep that close. You might need it soon. Quote. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Co-workers who had ignored her for weeks suddenly wanted to talk. Some congratulated her. Others whispered behind her back. Of course the CEO likes her ideas, one woman said. He likes her, period. Lily pretended not to hear. But when she got home that night, in her tiny apartment filled with half-packed boxes and unpaid bills, she smiled for the first time in a long while. For once, she had not been invisible. Meanwhile, Adrian stayed late in his office, reviewing presentations he no longer cared about. His assistant entered quietly. Sir, about the new project, he interrupted her. Put Miss Harper on the concept team. She has an eye we need. The assistant hesitated, surprised. Understood, sir. When she left, Adrian leaned back in his chair, staring at the rain streaks on the window. He knew it was unwise to get involved, even professionally. But there was something about her honesty, her defiance, her spark. It reminded him of the version of himself he had lost somewhere along the way. Downstairs, Lily received the email. You have been assigned to the new creative development team. Report to the executive floor tomorrow at 9 a.m. She gasped, reading it twice. The executive floor. Her hands trembled as she whispered, That cannot be real. But it was. One wrong door had somehow opened another one this time, to a future she could not yet see. Sometimes, the universe does not send warnings. It sends opportunities disguised as mistakes. Would you have taken that chance, if it were you? The next morning, Lily arrived at Cole Dynamics earlier than she ever had before. The elevator climbed toward the top floor, her reflection trembling slightly in the mirrored walls. Her heart pounded louder with every floor that passed. She had never even been invited to the executive level, and now she was part of a project team that would be working directly with the CEO himself. When the doors opened, she stepped into a space that looked more like an art gallery than an office glass walls. Modern sculptures, soft jazz playing in the background. A woman from the design department greeted her politely and showed her to a large conference table already filled with people. And at the head of the table stood Adrian Cole. He looked different in the morning light, focused, calm, but somehow warmer than before. His eyes met hers briefly, and for a split second, it felt like the whole room fell quiet. Good morning, everyone, he began. This new campaign is not just about numbers, it is about emotion. I want every idea to come from something real. Do not be afraid to take risks. Lily sat near the end of the table, quietly flipping open her notebook. The others spoke confidently, marketing directors, creative heads, analysts. She listened, scribbling thoughts in pencil. Adrian noticed. What about you, Miss Harper? He asked suddenly. Her pulse jumped. Me? Yes, you see things differently. That is exactly what we need. She hesitated, then took a breath. Maybe instead of showing what the company sells, we show what it stands for: people, kindness, second chances, things that cannot be bought. The room went silent again. Someone chuckled softly, but Adrian's gaze stopped them. Second chances, he repeated. I like that. He smiled faintly, and for the first time she smiled back. From that day, they began to work together more often. Sometimes she would bring sketches of visual concepts. Other times he would ask for her opinion on a slogan. He always listened. And each time, their conversations drifted from business into something deeper: stories, dreams, regrets. One evening, after a long meeting, she stayed behind to finish the presentation slides. Adrian walked by her office, stopping when he saw her light still on. You should go home, he said softly. So should you, she replied without looking up. He chuckled. Fair point. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then he noticed her sketchbook again lying open beside her laptop. A drawing of the city skyline caught his eye, his building among dozens of others, but his was the only one with light in the top floor window. That is us, he said quietly. The only light still on. She looked up, smiling shyly. Maybe we both work too much. Or maybe, he said, we just have not found something worth stopping for. Her breath caught at the honesty in his tone. She quickly closed the book, trying to hide the blush that rose to her cheeks. They stood in silence for a moment longer before he added, "There is a gallery opening this Friday. My company sponsors it, but I rarely go. You should come. It is about young artists, people like you." "I do not think I belong in places like that," she said. "You might be surprised," he answered, picking up his coat. "Sometimes belonging is just about showing up." After he left, Lily sat frozen. She told herself it was just a casual invitation, nothing more. But deep down, something in her chest fluttered a spark she had not felt in years. By the time she reached home, the city was quiet. She laid the sketchbook on her nightstand, staring at it for a long moment. Then she whispered to herself, "Do not fall for him. Do not make it more than it is." But it was too late. Somewhere between pencil lines and late-night meetings, something had already begun. Outside, the lights of Manhattan flickered like restless stars, and in one corner office high above the city, Adrian Cole stood by his window, looking down, wondering why a woman who had nothing seemed to make him feel like he finally had everything. Sometimes connection begins in silence, not words, and sometimes that silence changes everything. Friday evening arrived, wrapped in the shimmer of city lights. Cars crawled along Fifth Avenue. Umbrellas bloomed against a drizzle that made the sidewalks glow. Lily stood outside the art gallery, clutching her small black purse like it was armor. Through the tall glass doors, she could see chandeliers, wine glasses, and people dressed in clothes that cost more than her monthly rent. She almost turned back, but then she remembered his words. Sometimes belonging is just about showing up. So she stepped inside. The space was breathtaking white walls, soft jazz, canvases bursting with color. Her heels clicked nervously against the marble floor. A hostess greeted her warmly, but Lily barely heard her. She was scanning the room for one face. And then she saw him. Adrian Cole, the man who owned this world of glass and gold, stood near the center of the crowd. He was speaking to a group of investors, confident and composed. For a moment, she thought he might not even notice her. But then he turned, and their eyes met. His surprise melted into a faint smile. He excused himself from the group and walked toward her. "You came," he said. "I almost did not," she admitted. "This place feels like another planet." "Then I am glad you landed here," he replied gently. She laughed, easing the tension. For a moment, it felt easy. Two people, not a CEO and an employee, just a man and a woman trying to breathe the same air. As the night went on, they drifted through the exhibits together. He listened as she spoke about the textures, the colors, the emotions behind each piece. He was surprised at how deeply she saw things he had missed. At one corner of the gallery, a large painting caught her eye, a woman sitting in front of a broken window, looking out at the rain. Lily stared at it for a long time. "It reminds me of something," she said softly. "That moment when you are trapped between where you are and where you want to be." Adrian looked at her profile, the way the light traced her cheekbones. "And which side are you on?" She smiled faintly. "I do not know yet." Before he could respond, a voice from behind them interrupted. "Adrian, there you are." It was one of the board members, a tall man in a silver suit. "They are about to announce the donors. Come on, everyone is waiting." Lily stepped aside politely. But then the lights dimmed, and the host of the event took the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said into the microphone, "tonight we celebrate creativity, generosity, and vision. Please welcome our principal sponsor, Mr. Adrian Cole, CEO of Cole Dynamics." Applause erupted. Cameras flashed. Lily froze. She had known he was successful, but seeing him like this on stage, under lights, the crowd chanting his name felt like watching a stranger. He thanked the guests with calm confidence, speaking about art and community, about giving young artists a platform. His voice carried strength, the kind that came from power, and suddenly she realized the truth. All this time, she had seen him as human, reachable. But here he was, miles above her world. After the applause, he stepped off the stage and found her again. "I am sorry about that," he said. "I should have told you this was my company's event." Lily forced a smile. "You do not owe me an explanation, Mr. Cole." He frowned. "Mr. Cole? I thought we were past that." She looked at the floor. "Maybe I was mistaken." He started to speak, but she shook her head. "You live in a world of donors and investors. I live in a world where I count every dollar before buying groceries. I should not have come." "Lily, please," she said, her voice trembling. "I cannot be a part of this story. Not one that ends with me being a footnote in someone else's world. She turned and walked away before he could stop her. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the streetlights blurred through her tears. Behind her, inside the glowing gallery, applause continued for a man who had everything except the one person who had seen him for who he really was. Would you have walked away if you were her, or would you have stayed to see what might have happened next? Rain returned the next morning, soft and gray, falling against the windows of Cole Dynamics. The building felt quieter than usual, as if even the air knew something between them had broken. Lily Harper came in early, head down, hoping no one would mention the gala. She could still hear the applause, still see him under the lights, and the way she had walked away from him without looking back. It had been the right thing to do, she told herself. A man like Adrian Cole could not possibly understand what it meant to struggle, to worry about rent, to eat canned soup for dinner. Their worlds were never meant to touch, but pretending she did not care hurt more than she expected. On the top floor, Adrian stood by the glass wall of his office, staring out at the skyline he had conquered. He had everything: wealth, reputation, control, yet all he could think about was the expression on her face before she turned away. It was not anger, it was disappointment. That hurt more than he wanted to admit. His assistant knocked gently. "Sir, the marketing report is ready." "Leave it on the desk," he said without turning around. She hesitated. "And Miss Harper called in. She said she will be working from the lower office today." He nodded, though the words cut deeper than they should have. By noon, Lily was packing her files, determined to disappear quietly. She told herself she would request a transfer to another department, something safe, something far from him. As she closed her laptop, she noticed her sketchbook on the corner of the desk. The same sketchbook that had started it all. She opened it one last time, flipping through the pages: coffee cups, city lights, the faint outline of his face. Her chest tightened. She tore the page out, folded it, and placed it in an envelope. With careful handwriting, she wrote, "Thank you for believing in me, even for a moment." Then she left it on his desk before heading toward the elevator. Upstairs, Adrian returned from a meeting to find the envelope waiting. He opened it slowly, reading the single line. The faint pencil smudge on the paper felt like a fingerprint, and something inside him cracked. He looked around his office: the awards, the leather furniture, the skyline outside, and for the first time, none of it meant anything. Without thinking, he left his office and took the elevator down. He found her near the lobby, coat in hand, eyes red from exhaustion. "Lily," he said softly. She froze. "Mr. Cole, please, do not make this harder." "Do not call me that," he replied. "Not after everything." She turned to face him. "What do you want me to say? That last night did not change anything?" "Because it did. It reminded me who I am and who you are." "I know who I am," he said quietly. "But I do not think you do." She shook her head. "You are a man who owns half this city. I am just a secretary, trying to survive. There is no middle ground." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You think success erases struggle? You think I was born on top? My father left with debts so heavy that I slept in my car during college. I built this company out of fear of losing everything again." Her eyes widened. She had never heard him speak this way, never seen the cracks in his perfect armor. "I do not want pity," he continued. "I just want you to know that we are not as different as you think." Lily looked down at the folded envelope still in his hand. "Then why does it still feel impossible?" He exhaled, pain flickering in his eyes. "Because you are walking away." For a long moment they stood there, the world moving around them, phones ringing, footsteps echoing, rain tapping against the glass doors. Finally, she whispered, "Maybe one day we will find the same ground, but not today." And with that, she walked out into the rain, leaving him standing there, holding the piece of paper like it was the last fragile thing he owned. As the doors closed behind her, Adrian whispered to himself, "You said I opened the wrong door. Maybe this time, you are the one closing it." A week passed, and the city kept moving as if nothing had happened. Deadlines came and went. The lobby of Cole Dynamics filled each morning with the same rhythm of footsteps and polite greetings. But for Adrian Cole, the world had lost its color. Every time the elevator doors opened, he caught himself hoping she would be there. She never was. Her desk remained empty. Her ID badge, left behind, sat neatly in a box marked "Terminated Contracts." She had officially resigned. No one knew where she went, and Adrian did not ask out loud. But every night, when the offices went dark and the noise faded, He found himself standing by the window, staring at the rain, the same way she used to. Then, one afternoon, his assistant entered with a folder. "Sir, there is something you might want to see. It is from the Community Art Center in Brooklyn. They are hosting a small exhibit." Adrian looked up, uninterested at first. "And why would that concern me?" The assistant smiled faintly. "Because one of the artist's names is Lily Harper." The pen fell from his hand. "When?" "Tonight, 7 o'clock." For the first time in days, he felt alive. That evening, the sky was painted in soft pink and gray as he drove across the bridge. The Brooklyn Art Collective was a modest brick building tucked between cafes and bookstores, nothing like the grand galleries he was used to. Yet as soon as he walked inside, he felt something stir. The air smelled like paint, dust, and hope. People moved quietly between canvases hung along the walls. In the center, he saw her. Lily stood by a small display of her work, wearing a simple blue dress, her hair pulled back, her hands nervously clutching a cup of water. For a long moment, he simply watched her. She was smiling nervously, beautifully as a couple admired one of her drawings. It was the sketch he remembered, the one of the city skyline with a single lit window at the top. He stepped closer. She noticed him halfway through a conversation, her words faltering. "Mr. Cole." "Adrian," he corrected gently. "No more titles." She looked shocked, unsure what to say. "I did not come to interrupt," he said. "I just wanted to see what you created." Quote. Her voice softened. "This place is nothing compared to your world." He shook his head. "It feels more real than mine." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she gestured to the walls. "Most of these drawings are from my nights after work. They were my way of breathing." He walked to one piece and stopped. It was a charcoal sketch of a door slightly ajar, light spilling from the crack. Beneath it was the title, "The Wrong Door." He turned to her. "You kept that?" "It was never about the mistake," she said quietly. "It was about what came after." He swallowed hard. "You once told me you did not belong in my world. Maybe I was wrong to make you think that was the only world that mattered." Lily looked at him, seeing the exhaustion behind his calm exterior. "Why are you really here, Adrian?" "Because I owe you more than an apology," he said. "You made me remember why I started all this in the first place, to create, to build something meaningful. Not just for profit, but for people. For someone like you." Her eyes glistened, but she shook her head. "Do not make promises out of guilt." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "This is not guilt. This is clarity." Around them, the chatter of guests faded into the background. Adrian reached into his coat and handed her an envelope. "What is this?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "An invitation. A proposal, in a way. Cole Dynamics is funding a new program, an art and innovation grant. I want you to lead it, in your name." Her mouth fell open. "You cannot be serious." "I am. Consider it a second chance for both of us." She looked down at the envelope, then back at him. "You never stop surprising me." "I am not trying to surprise you anymore, Lily. I am trying to show you I meant every word." Quote. As she opened the envelope and saw her name printed at the top of the program, her hands trembled. The room seemed to fade, replaced by the memory of the night he had walked into her office by mistake. Maybe it had never been a mistake at all. 2 months later, spring had arrived in New York. The streets were alive again, coffee carts steaming on corners, children laughing in the parks, and window displays glowing with new beginnings. Inside the renovated East Wing of Cole Dynamics, a new sign gleamed above the entrance. The Harper Initiative. Art meets humanity. Lily stood just beneath it, surrounded by canvases and flowers sent from partners and friends. The grant program had become real. It was designed to fund young artists who could tell stories of kindness, resilience, and change exactly the kind of truth she once believed had no place in the corporate world. She could hardly believe any of it. Just a few months ago, she had been an invisible secretary. Now she was the creative director of a project that carried her name. The irony was not lost on her. Sometimes, life had a strange sense of humor. The soft click of shoes echoed behind her. She turned, and there he was, Adrian Cole, dressed simply for once. No tie, no entourage, just him. He smiled when he saw her. "You did it," he said. She shook her head. "No, we did it. You believed in something that was never on a balance sheet." Good. He looked around the room, his expression softer than she had ever seen it. "I spent years thinking leadership was about control. You taught me it is actually about connection." Lily smiled faintly. "I did not teach you. You just remembered. The guests began to gather as the ceremony was about to begin. A journalist approached, asking for a quote, but Adrian gently waved her off. Later, he said. His eyes stayed on Lily. Before everyone arrives, there is something I need to do. Quote. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Lily froze, her breath catching. Adrian, let me finish, he said quietly. The first time I walked into your office, it was by accident. But everything that came after that was the one thing in my life that finally made sense. Her eyes filled with tears. He opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple but elegant, a single diamond framed in rose gold. I do not want to make another mistake by letting you walk away again, he said. I am not asking you to belong to my world, Lily. I am asking you to build a new one with me. The room fell silent. People nearby turned as if sensing something sacred was happening. Lily took a shaky breath. You really do not give up easily, do you? Not when it matters, he said. She laughed softly, tears slipping down her cheeks. Then I guess this time, you opened the right door. Quote. Applause broke out from the small crowd that had gathered around them. The sound of clapping and soft music filled the air. But for a moment, neither of them heard anything except the quiet rhythm of their own hearts. Later that evening, after the ceremony, the two of them stood alone in the gallery space. The city lights glittered beyond the windows, reflecting off the glass walls. On one of the displays was a framed sketch, the same drawing she had made long ago of the city skyline, with one lit window at the top. Beneath it, a small plaque read, "The best mistake we ever made." Lily looked at it, smiling through tears. You really kept it. Adrian nodded. It reminded me that sometimes the wrong turn leads exactly where you are supposed to go. She leaned her head against his shoulder. For once, there was no storm outside, no fear, no distance, just peace. He whispered, I used to think success was about never losing control. Now I know it is about knowing when to let go. She smiled, closing her eyes. And to hold on when it feels right. They stood there quietly as the city buzzed beyond the glass. Two souls who had once collided by accident but had chosen each other on purpose. Some mistakes are just fate wearing a disguise. What do you think, was it really a mistake, or was it destiny all along?